I'm Kagan, CEO of Dynamic Grid. I'm basically going to lay the foundation for what we're going to talk about. And I've got my notes here. So obviously, we're talking about decentralization here, but there's some other points that are happening all across the world. And the electricity system is drastically changing. We're going to see more change in the next 10 to 15 years than we've seen in 150. And it's going to be shaped by decentralization, which is what we're talking about, which is the name of this forum, but also digitization. We talked a lot about that with quantum technologies and classical AI, et cetera. But also democratization. I think that's really where we're going to focus on, is democratization of the energy system. Together, really the question is, how are we valuing energy? How are we trading it, and how are we financing it? And it's no longer a future scenario. It's really something that's happening today. And we're seeing a whole range of technologies that we're going to talk about that are really democratizing how we interact with energy. And that's, solar on rooftops and heat pumps and battery systems now. And it's this two-way power system. So, but there's also fundamental engineering questions that we have, and how do we deploy those things? And one of them that I'm going to talk about, which is something that we really need to grapple with, is Niles talked about, from Snyder talked about, the next big foundational challenge. And, and I call it the infrastructure gap. As we electrify, as we put in DERs, and I have a broad view of DERs, so it's solar and heat pumps, it's batteries, it's all of that stuff. But as we put all of those assets out on the grid, we're going to need to actually imagine a world where we have 2 times more power being consumed by consumers, and peaks that are going to be about 3x of what they are today. And that is going to put a tremendous strain on our infrastructure. A researcher, a friend of mine in the States, unfortunately has proprietary information, Burns & McDonnell, a very large engineering firm in the United States, one of the largest utility engineering firms in the United States, has estimated, he's done about 12% of the US electrical grid and modeled it for full electrification and full DER. And what he determined is we need in the US, we need $10 trillion worth of infrastructure improvement just on the distribution grid. That's substation and below. $10 trillion. That actually dwarfs the cost in the next 10 years of putting in solar panels, batteries, and transmission. We don't have the money. We just don't have the money. So we have to use this digitization and what we're going to talk about, which is democratization, to figure out how to optimize the system we have. And of course, I have to get a phone call. Jeez. So we have to find ways to use the assets we have, the infrastructure we have, more efficiently. And this is what we're all going to talk about here. New ways of coordinating, new ways of optimizing, and valuing what we already have. And that's not only assets, but valuing how you use power. If I use power at 6 p.m., it's more expensive than if I use power at 2 p.m. when there's a ton of solar on the system. So we have to figure out, and that's, I told Peter, he's got to add to his pitch. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say, did everybody vote, by the way? I mentor Peter, so I have an ulterior motive here. But I said you need to put in your pitch, you need to put in regulation, that risk of regulation. And that's something that I will talk to everybody ad nauseum, is how do we regulate? And these are some of the things we're talking about here, is how do we build new business models in the system to democratize? Because the key is really not so much digitization. That's just a tool. It's really about how we democratize the electrical system. I'll leave it there.
In order? We're like going a little rogue here because we didn't even discuss the order exactly, but thank you for having me. Alberta is a fully deregulated market, and it's a very strange environment when you compare it to the other provinces across Canada. We're kind of the loud cousin. We seem to scream about a lot of things, and we have a lot of stuff going on, and it's generating a lot of volatility. And so, sorry. Well, it was
Who
sort
are
of
you,
my
by the
next,
way?
my next row. Yeah, so we've had some pretty dramatic price swings, and I'm going to tell you that myself, Vicki Zinnick from North Parkland Power, I'm the CEO of North Parkland Power. North Parkland Power is a co-op, and it's a rural co-op. And so when we heard some of the discussions that happened the other day about, or yesterday, about what drives companies, distribution companies, investment. When you're dealing with a power co-op, it's different than some of the investor-owned utilities because the people you are serving are the people who are paying and reap the benefits of that distribution system. So you don't overbuild. You aren't incented by profit. It's a not-for-profit organization. So it has a whole different playing field than the rest. And while that might seem odd, 49 million people in North America are served by power co-ops. So it can't be all wrong. It's just that only Alberta has power co-ops, which is also probably wrong, in my view. Living and breathing the co-op hat. Anyways, just wanted to tell you that today I wanted to share with you a little bit about Alberta's experience, what it teaches us about decentralized energy, specifically how we can balance innovation, investment, and consumer protection. It really does come down to what type of dynamic market do we want to play with and how can this actually be beneficial to consumers at large. My topic is a lot about the consumers, so we've heard a lot about the creativity in this room, and honestly, and this will show my age, when I was looking at or listening to all of this, I felt like Pinky in the Brain. I'm Pinky, and you are all the brain, because I too, when I was listening to Jay and that, was like, oh my God, I had no idea how advanced this was. And it's pretty incredible. So anyways, every other province seems to have some sort of centralized market when they're dealing with the industry. They have either a crown model or a large entity like Quebec that has the ability to smooth pricing overall. Alberta isn't like that. We have a very competitive market. We have a competitive wholesale market, private generators, dozens of retailers, and no crown-owned utility. So although that helps in a lot of ways, it doesn't necessarily generate the investment. However, you can also say the reverse is true when you don't have that, and you have, and I don't want to bring politics into it, but I'll bring politics into it. When your politics are switching, you also have a level of uncertainty from a regulatory reform that doesn't necessarily always promote investment. Our market over the last decade shows exactly what happens when decentralization is powered by pure price signals. From 2015 to 2017, supply was abundant, and prices dropped to like 3 cents a kilowatt, 3 to 5 cents. That's crazy, but it's great for the consumer, not for an investment model. Then, when coal retired faster, and I'm not going to say it when the NDP came into government, but it just timed well. When coal retired faster than a new supply coming online, our prices dropped. We're talking over 30 cents a kilowatt. And I'm not talking in years, I'm talking in months. People's bills doubled, tripled, tenfold. It was crazy. And it caused a lot of shock, a lot of rate shock amongst consumers, a lot of challenge. And government interventions arrived late. Like they arrived late to the party. The regulatory reform wasn't implemented quickly enough, and there was no consumer protection. They were totally exposed. This cycle, though, is essential for emerging decentralized energy systems. So there's a couple key takeaways. First, volatility. It's an incredibly strong innovation engine. Alberta's explosive growth in behind-the-meter solar, storage adoption, and load shifting behavior became price signals that were real and immediate. So when we, and if that's one positive thing to say, is that volatility really did create the incentive that consumers needed to put in microgen, to take control of their energy consumption, to start using the products and programs that were introduced in the market. So it really did go a long way in that way. For decentralized systems to succeed, innovation and consumer protection must evolve together. Transparency and real-time information are mission critical. And I've heard that time and time again over the last 2 days. Having that information available would be amazing to try and make sure that we all move forward together. So Alberta is a living laboratory, essentially, for decentralized markets, really. We have all the factors that are there. This is where Alberta's story aligns perfectly with the Powershift theme. Our hourly wholesale market already contains the core mechanics of transactive energy, real-time pricing, autonomous balancing, and growing population of prosumers. And you're right, we have a combination of consumers who are doing nothing and don't know how to do some of these things, and prosumers who are becoming more educated and involved and taking control of their energy. So because volatility accelerated distributed generation, Alberta now has the conditions that are ripe for peer-to-peer trading, community self-consumption, and eventually tokenized energy assets. So looking forward, I believe the future of decentralized energy is not just more assets. Oh, I think I'm one slide ahead. Okay. Anyways, sorry, I should mention that for rural co-ops, tokenization could enable fractional ownership of community solar and shared storage, which allow members to trade surplus energy with micro-community. I was so pleased to hear some of that yesterday. I thought, wow, finally, we're starting to make some inroads in that front. We've been talking about it for years and haven't seemed to be able to execute on it. So looking forward, we've got a lot of things in play in Alberta, a lot of work that needs to get done, and we're definitely taking control and charge of that, but it is slow. Because we're decentralized, we believe in a lot of industry consultation, and we have a lot of industry that's long in the tooth. And so making some of those forward moving initiatives happen is taking a little bit longer than normal. So in closing, my closing message is simple. Decentralization works when innovation and protection evolve together. It really is necessary. You will get more happening with a larger audience involved, that being the consumers or prosumers, and actually moving forward the initiatives. If there was one thing, and I think you're going to allude to it, Mark, is that consumers can really make or break a lot of the products and a lot of the progress that can be made. So I think that the balance is what makes decentralized energy not just possible, but sustainable across Canada.
Fantastic. So, Kate, did you get my phone call? Yeah. Just kidding. All right, so it was a fantastic conference. We had a very good panel, and I want to thank again Anouk and the team here to get us all together here in this room and the fantastic panel that we're sharing right now. One thing that really struck me is that even for us, people from all across the industry, energy, transmission, power generation, vendors, quantum people, blockchain people. It took us like a day to talk, and we're still not there yet. We're just touching a little bit the surface to figure it out later, maybe hopefully soon. So that's fantastic. But for leaders in the industry, it creates a tremendous problem to really understand what's going on. And the pace of innovation, invention is just moving faster. And that's what got me really excited. I used to work in government, and the Ministry of Education, and we digitalized a lot of things at the time. And then I got a call from Cisco, and I joined the Innovation Center. That was about 10 years ago. And the idea was to say, well, for the leaders of organizations that are traditional, could be energy, finance, mining, all traditional energy, they have a hard time figuring out what's going on. They're really busy running their business. Now quantum is coming, AI is coming, blockchain is coming. They don't even know what that means. They don't know if it's going to happen in 1 year, in 10 years, in 100 years, and what is the impact for their business. And I thought that's a tremendous opportunity for me to go there and help them figuring things out. I was amazed. I could be in the innovation room with a lot of connected devices on the board, thermostats, alarm bells, connected everything. And we got some grown-ups, and they would just become like kids. And I could teach them something about something. We could learn together because, of course, they know a lot more on their industry. I think we are coming to that point in 2025 where it's not getting simpler, but it's getting ever more complex and complicated. So just to give you another example on the blockchain, I'm spending a lot of time on blockchain. So I'm running the US and Canada local groups for blockchain IEEE. There's a technical community. And some of the researchers, they wrote a paper in 2021. I was just reading it again and sharing here with the group. It's amazing how everything has changed. They dreamed of things like 4 years ago that could happen in 10 years, 20 years, and it's already happening. And the paper is already obsolete, right? So, okay, who am I? So I told you a little bit about me. My name is Marc Lejour. So I'm passionate about innovation, getting industry, large organizations, systems to change. Starting government, I think like if we get any change in government, maybe chances we can do somewhere else as well. And I was more recently, over the last 18 months, I was working with Exaion, just I left this summer. And Exaion, we basically built the data center used by Pink. So in this data center, we had very virtuous environment, liquid cooling, water in a closed circuit, recycling the heat for the building next door, quantum computers like Marie-Claude was mentioning, NVIDIA hardware. So we're just the gnomes in the data center behind Pink. Yeah, so energy is fascinating because things are changed so fast. And in blockchain, things are also changed really fast. So a couple of things you want to know, brushing up. At Exaion, so this company, which is basically also funded by EDF. EDF Group is one of the largest utility provider, largest in Europe, 500 terawatts. So EDF has been working, and our team has been involved in a number of blockchain projects. So one of them is going on right now. It's called U2 Demo, and it's a project to basically share electricity among 8 EU member states. And based on Energy Web. There is also an interesting project we were working on based on the open source identity framework from the EU to make sure you know who you're dealing with. And because that's becoming an increasingly big issue. You want to know who you are as a person. But now you're talking to machines. You want to know who's that machine. Is that the right machine, or somebody come here and swap the machines for another machine, right? So there are a number of blockchain solutions that are being developed for that. Cisco's use them and save millions of dollars in licensing fee, revenue against counterfeit. In the EU, they have this Gaia X blockchain where you can basically make sure who is who they say they are. And as of yesterday, Gaia X is also in Canada. So there is Gaia X Canada by a team. If you know the Digital ID Lab from Ottawa, a lot of them between Ottawa and Quebec, they actually launched the Gaia X in Canada. We have another interesting project that's related to the same ecosystem. It's called Clio X, and it's developed by a team at UBC. And they're working on the problem of making the commons work economically. Commons, for example, you go to a library, everybody likes to enjoy the library, but nobody likes to pay for the library, right? So, and then Google AI, OpenAI, they go there, scan everything, and then they make money on it, right? So the whole idea is, can we do federated AI? Can we monetize somehow these commons so that the money can come back to improve them? So CleoX is rooted in UBC. They're doing a lot of partnership also with the EU. It's built on PontusX, another technology there. So there are many, many projects. Maybe the most important thing that's really happening in blockchain right now, you probably heard about it, it's revolutionizing finance, and it's those stable coins and those payments. So forget crypto, forget the speculation for a moment. Imagine that a bank, let's say JP Morgan, is taking the checking account from their clients and they somehow tokenize it. And now they can move that money over a rail and complete a transaction, clearing settlement in a matter of seconds or less for less than 1 cent. And that's what's happening right now. And the BIS, the central banks of central banks, they're actually working on this so they can actually make that work across all the central banks, because JP Morgan is nice, but it's a private company. Now central banks are across the world, and there's an innovation center in Canada, Toronto, so working also on this big project. It opens the door, and I'm a Cisco guy, so I'm still fascinated by IoT. IoT is going to change the world, of course. But now think that these devices connected to the internet, they can have some kind of intelligence, let's say an AI agent in there of some sort. But now this AI agent has also a wallet. And this AI agent can go shopping in a marketplace, and they can make that transaction for less than a cent. 7 years ago, I'm going to close on that, you just open the thing. 7 years ago, there was a talk by York Rhodes, is the blockchain lead at Microsoft. At the time, we were partnering with Microsoft and EY already, so and JP Morgan. So York Rhodes comes on stage and gives this vision of a smart city. Imagine a person running with their electric car. They're stopping at the red light, okay? Red light, they're waiting for 30 seconds. They can do a microcharge of their vehicle. It's not a lot of money. They have to pay for it. But with this fraction of cent transaction fees now, they can actually do micro payments for 50 cents, for $1 of microcharge. Then they can go away. Of course, I pass you the rest of the idea with the smart city lights and everything that turns on. And you can go, maybe the grid wants to get some energy back, then maybe you discharge and you sell your electricity from your battery, right? So imagine what all this device-to-device, M2M, machine-to-machine communication can do when payments are actually cheap, almost free. And we're gonna talk about that more.
And I guess I'm the last one. Hey everyone, my name is Geraldine GP. I'm the co-founder at Assets Waves. And so I was brought in this conversation based on the fact that we do tokenization at Assets Waves for real estate assets. So we've been starting working on that project a couple of years ago, like approximately a year and a half ago. And we are facing a couple of challenges as many founders and startups, but we also see some of what we're doing that is replicable in the energy ecosystem. I think Mark covered a lot about like how it works in terms of using tokenizations, the capacity and the possibilities of tokenizations, bringing more liquidity, bringing more capacities, and probably co-ownership as well, and fractionalizing all assets. And I think it's also bring more power to sustainability in terms of managing energy. So I am not the most techy person in the room, but I think when we're thinking about tokenizations, there are opportunities to think about how to reduce, the energy consumptions and managing better and optimizing for most of our consumers and users through using tokenizations, but we also have another way to think about how we can finance energy too, right? With more transparency, with more capability of having ecosystems peer-to-peer and groups actually to finance themselves through using ledgers. And I think that's probably the future. It's already there. We're already advanced, but we need also some support. I think the government here needs to help the compliance in order to bring more of that, to find a better way to create more funding for energy and everything tokenization.
That was quick and
Right?
Thanks for saving me
Right.
here, looking at the
Yes.
clock.
This is amazing. So we have assets, we have products, we have innovation, and we have ingenuity. Bringing all those pieces together now and making it work is going to be the biggest challenge of all. When I arrived yesterday and I was listening to all of this quantum information, quantum data, quantum machining, and I'm like, okay, what are we, in the past, if we were to always look in the past, which we should be cognizant of the past, but always looking forward, is this analysis paralysis? Is this quantum information going to actually generate or do anything for us, and how? And I've heard so many positive things there, and I think, Kay, you've got some comments.
what you said and what Geraldine said about its ecosystems, and I'm a complex systems scientist, so I look at how the dynamics in complex systems, and one of the things you learn pretty quickly is the power is in the connection. And what you talked about with Alberta is the power of connections, of lots of things connecting, a lot of people transacting. Mark, you talked about it. Tokenization is a part of that. The future of the power shift, as this title was, is in how to really accelerate the connections between people and assets. So that's the big take, because we're really building an ecosystem. You said it. We're building an ecosystem. And the more things that participate in that ecosystem, the stronger it is and the better, more resilient it is.
I think if I can follow up on that as well, the fact that we're thinking about ecosystems also brings that idea of sovereignty, right? When it comes to the data, when it comes to the power of people of deciding how they want to use energy and how they can power, for example, villages or any things that will gather people and connect them and view how we can make, the different transactions possible and grow from a financial standpoint too.
Yeah, I think maybe you can also talk a little bit more about the financing part, because you've been in the field as an entrepreneur for a long time, and we just heard in a previous talk that we need like trillions of dollars in assets, and I think we mentioned it too. So how are you going to finance this? And you've been working on some of these models, so can you tell us more?
I mean, there are many models existing, but the one that we are currently setting at Assets Waves is actually the peer-to-peer model, right? Where you have one agent that is looking for some funding and another one that is able to provide little microfinancing. And in that ecosystem, people can become independent and create some value together. And I think that's something that we should leverage as well in the energy environment, and we see more of that. There are application of that in Regen Network, which is soil and agriculture economy, and that brings more independence and brings more independent way to create value and money.
Yeah, Geraldine has been regenerative finance. If you don't know about that, just check it out, because it blew my mind when I heard about it. But my money is on Vicky here, because she's really close to the customer. I think that's where everything happens.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to say is all of these things are great and they add value, but they have to show the benefit. That value has to be monetized to the consumer in such a way that it makes sense and it net negative or net zero cost. As we continue to evolve and add all these layers of products and things, it's sort of like when you buy a car. You have to buy the car, then you have to get a license, and then you have to get a registration, and then you have to get insurance. And all these things add up. Pretty soon the cost of that car is a lot more than the consumer bargained for. Same here. All of these things that we're talking about and we want to make it work, it has to make sense to the consumer, or they're not going to buy it, or they're going to be a complete disruptor to your overall program and actually negate all your good work. So, I mean, it really has to play well.
I hate in the US the VPP model because all it does is create another layer in between the consumer and their power, which takes a majority of the value out of the response that your things are that you bought that are doing something. So if you have your heat pump and you hold off and maybe use more power at 3 p.m. so that you can turn off at 6 p.m., assuming you're in Texas and it's air conditioning or something like that, maybe not in Canada. It's the opposite way in Canada. If there's somebody else who's managing that system, that value is going to them, it's not going to you. So this is where digitization comes in, and tokenization and blockchain is how do we get those transactions to be as little as possible so that you can just put a smart device on your heat pump and you hold the value because you're the one who's actually changing behavior. You know, maybe your agent is changing behavior, but you are the one who's changing the behavior. So we really need to. Eric Berlow is a ecologist, and he talks about complexity a lot, and he talks about the best I probably get the quote a little bit wrong, but the best complexity is simplicity. So we need to figure out how to simplify, and ecosystems, natural ecosystems are amazingly complex, but they're also amazingly simple. They have very simple rules. You go into a swamp, you've got a snake and you've got a frog. The frog has one thing, two things, find food and stay away from snake. And snake is find food, find frog. Really, really simple rules, and it works.
In terms of behavioral change, economics and money is playing a big, if people, especially in those times where inflation is big and everybody's thinking, where can I spare a little bit of money here and there, you get people to pay attention pretty quick. One thing I learned at Cisco, lessons learned when I was there, I was part of so Innovation Center, we did the smart cities, the smart buildings, and honestly, at the beginning, like people were thinking like, these Cisco guys, they would just want to sell their stuff. But we were working with architects and developers, facilities managers. I could see after 6 years, the mindset and the mental model of this industry totally flipped away. At the beginning, we had people selling basically square footage. This is just design it, build it. This is your square footage condo, this many square feet, buy it, rent it, whatever. To a point where people were buying an experience. They want to know how can I, how carbon free? What's the carbon footprint of the building? How can I contribute to that? I have an electric car, where should I plug it? I want to automate my home. I want this and that. So the conversation in facilities management totally changed the thing. And all these conversations we had years and years to plug cables here and add another box there, at the end, it was a lot of noise. When the customers decided that that's what they wanted to buy, all the industry followed there. So that's why I actually want to figure out what's going to be the shape of the energy sector in the future. Are we going to see new business models like the ride-sharing model or the sharing economy or that thing, right? The Uber and the Google and everything. Who's going to be the next Google? Who's going to be the next Uber? Is there one? is there a new role for organizations like Vicky's to play in the system?
Yeah, I lead two different companies, both of them co-ops. One's retail across Alberta. And I'll tell you, the consumer or the prosumers that sign up for our services on that one, very educated, very involved, very much wants to participate in investing and tokenization and anything else they can get their hands on. They're very eager and go. The power co-op in the rural environment is split because you're dealing with a demographic that is older, and yet the newer people or the younger people are moving back in because they love the part about living rural, but they also have been brought along on the technological cycle, as well as, just being charged about doing something new. So balancing all of that is incredibly difficult. And I know when I was listening, one other person said, what about the seniors? What about, the people who are not connected? How do you get them engaged? And this transparency and education and information, you just say quantum to them and they'll be like, what? Right? It's really super hard. But being able to speak the language and clearly identify or explain what it is you're trying to achieve, people seem to get in line and want to really participate.
That's a really good question. So I talked about that $10 trillion before of improvement, and really we got to get that 10 trillion down to 1 trillion. So how do we finance with tokenization? How do we finance those edge assets that are going to actually save all people money and the people who are actually buying those assets? How do we tokenize that, and how do we are able to distribute, my solar, not only the power that my solar is producing, but also give me the money to build that solar on my roof. Maybe I'm low income. I don't have the money to do this, but you providing a model to make that happen.
Yeah, and if I may answer that, so what we're using currently is smart contract. I guess everybody have an understanding of what smart contract is. It's like a framework that will give you the ruling of the assets that you're trying to tokenize. Now, by tokenizing assets, then we can lower prices and also barrier and entry to any kind of asset and energy. So that means anybody with low income, as you mentioned, could have access for less than $50 even to, energy, materials, assets, whatever it is that needs to be tokenized and shared. And also it provides more transparency and impacts. And when we think about like the financing of it, there are green bonds that can be attached to it, decarbonizations, assets as well that can be attached to it. So there are multiple possibilities and multiple ways of revisiting like how we can lower the cost, but also increase opportunities for everyone actually to make money and to contribute and distribute also the access to energy.
Do you have a solution to the regulation cost, why it costs us $3 a watt to put solar on a rooftop, and in Australia it's $1? Can we solve that problem?
I mean, I don't know if I have the answer, but I think in this room there are multiple of us that could put our minds together, and also government support in order to have the regulation in place in order to discuss how we can tokenize and have accessible energy for everyone.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes, and it will be fun actually to have questions from the audience. I guess we can accommodate a couple if you feel like it. So please spice it up a little bit.
I guess bringing it back to the regulation, are there certain jurisdictions that you can get a head start in starting to tokenize these decentralized assets? Or on the flip side, is this something we can drop into any markets in North America today, maybe through rural co-ops? Or, I'm curious how that would look.
Munis, at least in the United States, munis. If you can get into a muni, that's the way to go, because their reason for existing is to lower prices for consumers, period. Same for co-ops. So anything that optimizes the system and lowers costs for everyone, they will listen.
The challenging aspect of it is when you're looking, the regulation is one thing, and it's kind of strict and stringent in some aspects, but when you're looking at something like a tokenization, and in Alberta, 40% of the people don't own the roof that's over their head, so they can't just necessarily get microgen. So the thing would be, and I think Huga was talking about this? Yeah. Right. He was talking about this, this community aspect, community investment aspect, where you can get people to buy into an asset, and then you can sell that back to those people as an investment that can apply. I mean, in Alberta, you can't apply it to your bill because you have to use a filter that filters through, because the meter isn't on your house. There's ways to get around the regulation. Not get around, I shouldn't say that. How to, because that would be unethical. So, how to manage the regulation and accommodate or achieve the same end result.
So we now only have 6 more startups to mention.
Yeah, well, just one thing. In Canada, anything blockchain and finance, Alberta is the way to go, and they're doing very interesting things there.
Yeah, I've got a question for the panel, and more from our experience of not only consulting on blockchain, but also implementing blockchain. And some of the basic challenge which we faced in country like India, first thing is cost-wise. Yes, we were able to explain to the consumer prosumers why it is beneficial. But the next question was, is it legal? Will I be cheated while adopting this type of technology? And then the regulators came behind us and they said it's approved. So the Reserve Bank of India approved it, the regulators, electricity regulators approved it, and then the next challenge of implementation, which was interoperability between the banks, whether my wallet can, I deal with a particular bank, and whether my wallet can fit with the other banks, and how do I transact. So all those operational challenges and nuances is what we are solving right now. And trust me, this is very interesting. Building a product is most interesting. Now coming to co-op, we are working with Kentucky, which has got 5 interesting co-ops. And rooftop solar, again, regulatory pushback. Kentucky wants to secure their energy future. That's the motivation, not solar or anything. But one thing we figured out, and I think this is what you should also look at, is US is fast focused on adopting data center as job creation wheel. And for those data centers, they are adopting SMR, small modular reactors, as a technology to power data centers. And thank you for what you just said. We are working with Kentucky, state of Kentucky, and their energy office to tokenize the SMR investment. And the person who is driving that whole initiative for us, for Huga, he asked me one question: what if my grandfather, my parents were allowed to invest in 407, which is the paid highway in Ontario? So, investing in public infrastructure is by tokenization. So what we are doing with SMR investment is, it has got 7 cycles, 7 stages of SMR building, and roughly it cost about $5 billion. First 4 phases are the most riskiest phase. So we are investing tokens, and these token owners are the risk, invest in risky businesses. And so they can sell their token, it provides them liquidation in next stages when it becomes more like a bond. And that's what we are doing. So I think the question to all of us and to the panel is how we can push the regulators to make it happen.
We need to kidnap them and threaten their children.
Cut that. But thanks for the question, and that's brilliant, because you're doing, I think we're out of time there, but very quick points, and you make some great points, and congratulations to go to India. There's lots of people there, so it's fantastic to start a business. One point I'd like to highlight is, first, nobody cares. If you pay your coffee with a coin, a bill, your credit card. Nobody is asking you what technology you're using. If it's paper technology, anti-counterfeit technology, I think people don't care. They care about paying. It's the wrong conversation to say, hey, I have a blockchain coin, whatever, people don't care. If you start complicating, no, it's not working. The day blockchain wins or quantum wins or anything wins is the day we don't talk about it. But when you look at the app, you see the specs and you see the technical things that is in there. There is some blockchain, but only the engineer cares because you know it's working and you don't have to care. So that's I mean, it's kind of the main point I wanted to make.
But I think in terms of regulations, it's a collaborative effort for Canada more specifically, because originally Canada was very advanced in terms of anything tokenization, anything blockchain, crypto. If for some reason we put like kind of a step back on it, and it's a matter of now getting the people in the room, the institutions to collaborate and co-create together to push it forward. We will not be able to make it happen fully with transparency and with success without the institutions. We see some successes, we see like some group growing right now all over the country, but it's very few. And I think we need more collaborative opportunities with governments in order to have more compliance, more simplicity in the compliance ecosystem for tokenizations. I'm not gonna lie, for a startup like mine, it's a real challenge. We're based in Quebec and we are trying to push the conversations. We have good hopes. We're starting to move a little bit forward, but it's very slow. And I think that's something maybe we can learn from Alberta because it's a bit more advanced and progressive in that sense. But I think it should be advanced across the entire country as well.
One thought also, because it's a financing problem, right? So financing, talk to the funds, talk to the VCs, talk to the investment bankers. If you can come to them and say, hey, look, I have this investment. There's a lot of money, by the way. Their job is to allocate the money. So it's not that there's no money. You bring a good project, and here's a good idea for you. I have a project for you, Mr. Money, is that it's a guaranteed thing that's going to return a growth in the economy. You know, the economy is correlated with energy. If you're building energy infrastructure, you're growing the GDP, you're growing the economy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's just a matter of going there and making a business case. Best investment, I would put my money on that. I think we are yes, thank you so much for your attention, your question.